Namaskar, welcome to Insight with Ashok Vyas. This is another Monday when we are going to be talking to each other with the help of our panelists. We'll try to see how we can go further from where we are at the moment. When I say further, we always look at life as an opportunity to prepare ourselves so that we welcome all the happiness and all the goodness that is being offered for us by the world. We are prepared to welcome it. Are we prepared? Are we looking at good things happening around us? What is our decision in terms of starting our day on a positive note or a negative note? How do we interpret and process and create our experiences through all the news that become available to us, whether through newspapers or through Yahoo, Google, whatever be the mode that we are used to filling in for us. And if we are looking at what President Clinton did in the White House and how people around her, especially women, were feeling, whether they were threatened by his presence and what was it, how our imagination start running wild when we read about what President Trump did or said. How are we creating our experiences? Are we consciously deciding what happens to us, or we are sleepwalking through various decisions that becomes a part of our lives? So we thought today, in this age when digital technology is coming to our help on day-to-day basis, whether you are making use of your smartphone to plan your day or to schedule certain items, how are you gathering information that potentially helps you in deciding what you want to do with yourself this day, 7 days from now, a month from now, and of course for your life? Whether there is an overlapping area that we may term as a common ground where digital technology overlaps with our intuition or the divine element. And then before I take the opportunity of welcoming my guests and my panels today, let us also remember that day after tomorrow is a very important auspicious day called Gita Jayanti, and it is very rare that you will have a celebration of the birthday of a book. But Bhagavad Gita is not considered as a book. It is also revered as mother. Now, not getting into that emotional side or very, very thorough spiritual side of Bhagavad Gita, but the point is, here was this gentleman whose name Arjun. He felt he wanted to decide that there is no point in going in for the battle. So how Lord Krishna helped him in deciding for him? Was it the information of all the people that are there in front of him, or there was something bigger? So how are we making our decisions? Are we conscious, aware, and are we looking at our connection with something bigger in making our day-to-day decisions? We'll try to learn how to be better in making decisions that helps us in moving towards a sense of fulfillment. I have the pleasure of welcoming someone who earlier has been to our show, and she has written a wonderful book called Home at Last. We also talked to her once about decoding enlightenment, because this book is a step-by-step process whereby you may find yourself on a higher level of consciousness. And Sarda Chiruvolu ji is joining us today. Namaste, welcome.
Namaste, Ashok ji.
And since we are talking about mind, we also have someone who has helped many people in finding a sense of calmness with their mind through meditation practice, and she's seen as instructor with the Art of Living Foundation. Ruchika Lal ji joins us today. Namaste, Ruchika.
Namaste.
Ruchika is starting on a lighter note. Lal, red. Red, anger. And of course the stop sign red. But let's say many people find themselves impulsively flowing with a sense of anger if something unpleasant or something disagreeable happens, or someone tells them words which they feel creates a sense of blast in them. So how to decide the course of reaction on such moments?
It's a really good question. So Ashokji, one of the things that we need to realize is that emotions are stronger than thoughts, right? So I can tell myself a million times, Ruchika, don't get angry, right? I will also tell it in a very calm and collected place to myself, don't get angry. When somebody says words you do not like, just smile, breathe, whatever that I do. But when emotions come, then you're taken up with the storms of emotion. And it is a practice over a period of time to say, okay, emotion is coming up right now. I don't like this. I need to get this emotion out so it can leave me. But how do I just stay and look at the sensations in the body, look at what it's doing to me, observe what's happening inside, rather than start blaming, I'm angry because Ashok ji said something. I'm angry because Sarda ji said something. Forget what's happening on the outside. See what is happening inside. So even if you take a little bit of time to look inside, rather than keep ascribing reason and causality as to why I'm like this, and that is why it's okay for me to scream, we will start discovering a whole new world inside, patterns that are driving us to do certain things that we don't even know, right? What makes one person angry doesn't make another person angry. So it's not in the words, it's not in the person. It is a pattern inside that's being triggered.
So talking about the pattern inside, and so that awareness of noticing the pattern inside also is difficult to sustain because the impulse of settling the score runs so high many times. But somewhere down the line, whether these are short-term decisions or long-term decisions, probably what we are today is determined by the decisions that we have made in our lives. So, Sardaji, do you agree? Is it all a combination of the decisions that we have made which brings us to our present state, or there are many more factors?
I would say it depends on where we are in our present evolutionary stage. A lot depends on the decisions we make, depend on that, where we are. We're all evolving at a certain pace. So each one of us are in a different level of being. Therefore, how to address our anger issues or our emotions or our decision-making capacity varies with each one of us. And it takes time for us to realize and put it into practice our God-given resource called free will. Choosing right from wrong and deciding what's needed to be done in order to control ourselves or change in a way that we have a better reaction and better outcome, I feel.
So she talks about free will. Many times we hear people say that only that happens which God wants to happen. How do you see these two work in harmony?
It's a really good question. I hear this all the time, right? Is there free will? Of course there's free will. But then where's destiny, right? Everything is predetermined. Gurudev Sri Ravi Shankar says this beautifully. It's an analogy that has stayed with me. He said, your height is your destiny. There's not much you can do. But your weight is your free will. So both exist.
So many people will find it difficult to accept that weight is free will. They don't know if there is good food, then there's no free will.
They say there's a really good yoga posture to lose weight. Do you want to hear it?
Yeah.
So the only thing that you need to do, and all of us can do this together, just do this. Especially when somebody asks you, you need food, all you need to do is this neck movement. And I promise you, you will lose weight.
That was, I must say, funny but profound at the same time. So, there are some profound decisions, Sardaji, which determines how our life is shaping up. If you look back, would you say there was any moment in your life where one particular decision had far-reaching impact and led you to become what you are today?
Oh, definitely. I would say the time when I gave up my job, for example, for something that's been directing me to go after. You know, I had to decide which is the best way to do that. A type of a calling I had, you know, divine calling perhaps, directing me to a different route altogether. And at that time I was working full time, and I was a mother and taking care of a lot of issues. And I had to make a decision. What's the best way for me to follow the direction I'm pointing toward, you know? So I had to choose, though I loved my job and my position in pharmaceutical company for a long time I was working, I had to give up that rather than giving up other things to pursue what's asking me to pursue. So that was a big decision I had to take, and my life really changed after that, you know, because it's something I feel as if it was preordained, and something was enforced on me to go after what I am supposed to be, as if it's meant to, that I'm supposed to. So I had to make that decision to give up the job.
Okay, so Shadi, let's go deep with certain details in terms of decision-making process at that time, and there might be some of you who have found yourself at a stage that you want to do certain thing, but then there are other concerns that prevents you from going further. And most of the time it is economic concern. And you see, if you are making a number of dollars, then if you stop it, then you won't have it, and how would you pay your bills, and whether your family members are supporting you or not. So it could be some sort of a pursuit, as in your case it was spiritual. Some people may have a different project in their mind that they want to do, and they end up just thinking about it for years together, but they don't decide. So a little bit of your own experience, but in general also, when you have to make some crucial decisions in your life, is there free will also available, or it is just the circumstances that guide you?
Free will is a resource every one of us have within us. It's how we exercise that free will makes a difference. The capacity to you know, choose right from wrong, and you know, and exercise that willingly and put in effort and persistently, that takes us to a better outcome. Naturally, if you don't, and a lot of, like I said before, unless we are at that evolutionary stage where we can make that choice easily, comes from where we are in our present evolutionary stage. So until then, we're struggling to take decisions and wavering, you know, okay, if I did this, what happens? If I did this, what happens? I mean, it goes on. That's why we make mistakes and etc., and continue on. And I think that comes from in time for people, how seriously they exercise that God-given resource called free will, and are they really doing that or not? That's the question, you know. A lot of people in general don't, because mostly we are used to dealing with our senses, logic, reason, which is again kind of comes in a way for exercising our free will correctly, so that we can get the right outcome.
Wonderful. Talking about the right outcome, Ruchika ji, same question. Your own experiences, if there was any moment when you made a decision, or in general, as she was mentioning, it appears as if she's suggesting that when someone is evolved and there is no doubt about the course of action that you want to take, and when that clarity is there, then there's no question of going back or thinking about this or that. But there are very few people which you will say are on that stage, and I am not. So let's talk about me and those who are like me in this case. how to weigh pros and cons, and we keep doing that.
It's a really good one, and I think it's all of us, right? So I think two things we need to think about. One is a decision is always between, a decision is never between good and bad, right? If I say, do you want a cup of coffee or do you want a cup of muddy water? The decision is very clear. You want coffee, right? Or nobody will have muddy water. The decisions that we normally have to take are between good and better and bad and worse, right? If the decision is between good and better, you really can't go wrong. If it's between bad and worse, there's nothing much to choose from, right? So I think a lot of times we agonize because as human beings, we want more and more and more, and we're trying to optimize our lives. If you realize it's between good and better, it doesn't matter. A lot of us, and I can say from personal experience, my journey has been about, we want perfection, right? And in the quest for perfection, we're trying to optimize in our head. You know, if I can put the jigsaw puzzle here and then I put here and then it'll play out like this and then game theory this and then game theory that. Life has its own plan. The only thing the universe recognizes is action, not thought. Yes, it does. But unless you make a decision and take one step, how will anybody support you? And the good news is U-turns are allowed in life. So take a decision. If it's not right, course correct. But sitting and agonizing for years about a decision or months about a decision is not serving anybody, including yourself, because you're the only one wasting time.
So there is a clear-cut push that don't just sit on considering this, that, do it. But then when you say action is recognized, thoughts are not, it doesn't sound right. We have always heard that their thoughts are full of force, and we heard about some sages sitting in Himalayas meditating, and that is helping the world order and etc. etc. You know what I mean? So good thoughts also generates good vibes, and people feel good if you are around them with good thoughts, and if you are with negative thoughts, they feel bad. So just
100% true. Yeah. It is true. But thoughts can lead to action, but over-analyzing paralyzes, right? That's where analysis paralysis comes in. So thought is important, and intention towards life. I think it's very important for each one of us to step back and say, what do I really want in my life? Not what society has said is important for me. Not what media says will make me happy. Not the next big iPhone X, right? Not this travel to the Bahamas. Not any of that. What do I want in the solitude of my heart, which might be different from what Ashokji wants, might be different from what Sarda. But that conversation of honesty you need to have. And once you have that, then have the courage to follow your heart.
Have the courage to follow your heart. Sometimes, whether it is my heart or my ego, it's difficult to distinguish between the two. So, Sardaji, where would one recognize that he's ego-driven or he's driven by his heart? And also in this process, how meditation could help in attaining clarity about your decision making?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, meditation definitely is gives a positive input as far as our decision making is concerned. Like I said, it makes our as the free will is intervened by divine. Actually, it's a source that's given to us. It's accessible for everybody. I think meditation and elevating ourselves to higher realm of consciousness automatically takes us to that right direction, I think. You know, that's where you're not really, that's why I realized beings and people that are elevated are not struggling with decision making most of the time. They know exactly. I mean, that insight comes automatically without any effort. Therefore, I think the answer I would say is to consistently go after choosing, you know, that free will correctly. I mean, I know it's like, you know, somebody that's, you know, anger issues, or let's say somebody is having a drinking problem, to rectify, instead of going to the same bar drinking all the time, and do something about it, change. deviate yourself to doing something different, and that's what's needed. And that different choice, make a different choice. That will lift you up, gives you an outcome, positive outcome. And if you don't even try and do the same thing over and over, you remain at the same place and you constantly pick the wrong choices and wrong decisions and struggle in between. I think we need to lift ourselves up and sort of choose what is it that you want, Do you want to really repeat yourself continuously doing the same thing over and over, or do you want to change? Change. Evolution demands change. So you have to do things differently, and one time or other. Fine, you don't force yourself, but to get the positive results. Simple.
Sounds so simple. Yeah, coming to Ruchika ji, many times we get into the pattern of repeating ourselves, as she was saying. So if you want different results, then you have to do it differently, and in order to do it differently in a way which brings the optimum level of satisfaction or takes you towards your desired state, how meditation helps in becoming aware that this course of action would be preferable.
I have a question for you. Who do you think thinks more, men or women? Both of you.
Okay, so
on average.
Women.
Women. You agree? You concur?
I think, whether you like it or not, but I think it is not a correct way to differentiate on the gender basis, because there are some men who think so much.
On average.
Average, I don't know that many women. I don't know that
many. Right answer.
Okay.
So women actually think more.
Yeah.
Okay.
80,000 thoughts a day.
Mm-hmm.
Men, not significantly, but they're lower. 60,000 thoughts a day, waking hours, right? Which is more than a few hundred thoughts a minute. When you have that many thoughts in your head, where is clarity? You've talked about clarity, right? The story of Buddha comes to mind right now, and I'll link it back to meditation. So Buddha and his disciples were walking, and there was a lake, right? And there were some cows, buffaloes in the lake. So the lake had become very muddy. So he asked one of the disciples, he was thirsty. So he said, "Can you get me some water?" So the disciple went to the little pond lake, and he saw all the buffaloes were there. It was very muddy. So he came back and he said, "No, the water is very muddy. I can't, it's not, it's not worthy for you to drink that water." So he says, "Okay, let's rest here for a little while." So rest under a tree. In half an hour, he sends the disciple back. He says, "I'm really thirsty. Go get me some water from that lake." The disciple is very surprised. I just went there. There was nothing in it. But Buddha said, "Let me go back." By that time, the buffaloes had left, or the cows had left. And half an hour, the mud had settled down. The water on top was clear. Right? So he got clear water, gave it to Buddha. Our mind is nothing but that pond. The more you stir it with thoughts, the more the mud comes up, and there is no clarity. Meditation allows the mud to settle down, so clarity can come up, and decision making is much, much better. That is how meditation helps.
Sounds very good. Meditation helps. We are clear. But now, some of us feel that my mind is so much active. Even if I sit with closed eyes, I am actually playing with different thoughts, and I don't even know where my mind takes me. So, Sarda, both of you, starting with you, is it possible for everyone to meditate, or there are some people who are born in a way that they will quickly align towards state of meditation, and those who find it difficult, what can they do?
That's true, you're right. Meditation is not for everyone right away. It depends on the constitution of each individual, Some are tuned toward that, some are tuned toward other ways of lifting themselves up, like rituals, this, that, and they do a lot of pujas and devotion and idol worships, all these, different ways to get that tranquility and peace. That's what a lot of people are doing. But Meditation, for me, perhaps it was my way of being, or my constitution allowed me to get into that, and I got it easily, get into that. Like that, there might be a lot of people out there that are into that. Sorry, what were your other question? I lost track of that.
That's fine. Because let's take other question to her, because she has been teaching meditation. So, Ruchika ji, there must be some people you have met who initially felt that they would never be able to meditate, but now I guess you are teaching meditation for over a decade, perhaps. So, how do you deal with such areas of concern?
So I'm a living example. When I started meditating for the first time, it was actually with Gurudev himself, and I could not meditate, right? Not for 1 second. I said my eyes were closed, and there were all of these crazy thoughts going through my head, right? I'm like, this is not working out for me. And I literally thought I'll walk away from the meditation hall, but I didn't. So I think and to your first question, can everybody meditate? I honestly believe if I can meditate, every human being on this planet can meditate. Right? With the kind of head I had, if I can meditate and teach other people, there is hope for everybody on this planet. How is the question, right? Just shutting your eyes and telling yourself to meditate does not work. Our consciousness is so intelligent, but also very active, right? So how do you slow yourself down? Which is why the breath comes in, right? If you notice, every rhythm or emotional pattern that you have has a corresponding rhythm in breath, right? When you're angry, you breathe a certain way. Not just you, all 7 billion people breathe in a certain way, which is shallow, rapid. When you're very tired, long journey back from India, exhalation's much longer, right? So right now, it's a one-way street. Emotion gives rise to certain breath pattern. If during some of the meditation practices, what we teach is make it a two-way street. Change your breath, change the state of your mind. So use the breath to calm the mind, because talking to your mind does not work. If you could control the mind from the level of the mind, all of us would be meditating. But you need something a little bit more tangible in the mind to control it.
A little bit more tangible. And I think silence also could be tangible sometimes if you are in tune to your own silence. And when you hear such profound words, then there is a space of silence in which you try to process and absorb what is said. So what she said is make use of your breath to take care of your mind, and how we find that helpful in becoming better decision makers. Decisions that are not just based on the information offered to us or given to us by all the digital tools available to us, but also which is supported by our intuitive state, or if I use the word divine state, because the DD sounded good, decision making, digital and divine. So we'll talk more about that right after this short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching Insight with Ashok Vyas, decision making, digital versus divine, and how both of them overlap, finding that space so that your decisions lead to that optimum level of happiness which you aspire to attain. We are now going to be shifting our attention towards that side of our being where we look up to something bigger than ourselves, something greater than ourselves, and align ourselves to it. And we say that I leave my ego behind and I am willing to surrender. So this term surrender is also used in different way, and people interpret it differently. Briefly, before I start taking some of your calls, Ruchika ji, how surrender and ego, these words are interpreted by a modern mind?
So I think in the modern mind, when I say surrender, I means I am giving up on myself, right? I'm bending down, right, to something that might be bigger than me, so I'm making myself small, right? But if you think of a drop in the ocean, right, when the drop falls into the ocean, it becomes the ocean. Then it's not small. Small has actually become really big. So if you think of surrender that way, you're not losing anything. If anything, you're gaining your own magnanimity, right? Ego is so limited because it has a wall. But if the ego can become so big that it encompasses everybody on the planet, even people maybe, all the galaxies, then your ego has become that big that it encompasses everybody. Then ego is not so bad. But if it's a limited ego of my little small identity, that is where surrender becomes tough.
Beautifully said, wonderfully expressed. Sarda, you want to add something to this sense of ego that prevents us from surrendering?
That's true. Surrender to me is getting rid of the ego, actually, the way I look at it. It's what everybody's trying to do. When we're lifting ourselves up or trying to self-realize, it's being egoless and recognizing that essential nature of being within us that is going to direct all our thoughts and decision making, and everything comes in that package. Once you let go of the ego and recognize the divinity within you, that spark of divinity within us, that it is after, everything gets okay, actually. So that's the most important, is how do you get rid of the ego? And that's why we do meditation, we do this, we do that, to transcend and go beyond and lifting ourselves up. This way we can get to that point where it automatically you are being driven with that divinity, actually, in a sense, with the sense of being who you are. And that's what we're supposed to be doing in this life anyway. And that's the purpose of all this ultimate, every guru telling you to self-realize and get enlightenment. Why are we doing that? Why are they doing that? To get going and live in this world the way we're supposed to live in the world, with our true nature rather than the ego-driven nature. That's what it's all about.
Ego-driven nature, and another term she uses, driven by divinity. That is a very profound phrase. And let me take a call with this. Hello, ITV Live.
Hello.
Namaste.
Yes. First of all, hello, Ashok ji.
Ji, namaste.
First of all, let me thank you very much because of the Thanksgiving holiday has just come, and I wanted to do that on that day, but there was no time.
Okay.
Now, action is part of life, and it is sign of a living being. To do or not to do is what leads us to become a Hamlet, and you cannot be inactive but in a sort of oscillating situation. So action is a must. But as the Lord has said in Gita, Karmanyeva adhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. We can take action as part of our duty, but other factors come into play like daiva and other things, and then the results are shown. Those results may not be as we decide or want, but if the Lord has given us the correct direction and we act like Arjuna, then the success and the results that we see lead us to the happiness, and the success is then divine. So let me pray. Let the Lord guide us like Krishna guided and showed the direction to Arjuna, and then you will have all the success and happiness and lead to a divinity.
I appreciate
it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Wonderful, sir. Thank you very much. Let me clap for you. And with the reference of Bhagavad Gita as Prabhakarji brought back to us, Ruchika, the way dialogue between Lord Krishna and Arjuna is coming to us for over 5,000 years or so, and generation after generation, people have found a way to structure their life. How in the context of decision making, in any situation, of course, not on the battlefield. Sometimes when you are in the corporate world, there are occasions when you feel it is like a battlefield. When you are at home, there are certain situations when you feel that it's like a battlefield. So, how the core message of Bhagavad Gita is relevant for anyone, anywhere, in being a better decision maker?
It's a really great question. You know, often we think of Kurukshetra and Bhagavad Gita happened 5,100 years back. But Kurukshetra is happening every day in all our minds. This is a battlefield, right? Like you said, it could be at home, it could be at work, it could be in the subway. There's a constant battle happening here, right? So the lessons that Lord Krishna has given all of us, or through Arjuna, hold for all the battles of our mind on a daily basis. And whether you talk about, you just have to figure out, of the 18 chapters of Bhagavad Gita, which chapter are you stuck at right now? Because he's literally taken Arjuna step by step by step to a point where he went from confusion to despondency to I want to not do this, to what should the right thing do, to karma yoga, to jnana yoga, to bhakti yoga. He's covered everything. Those 18 chapters are like literally a little bit of a reflection of where is your mind stuck.
So where is your mind stuck? You will have to find that. Nobody else can find that for you. But what you can find for yourself may vary based on what is your company. So sitting in the company of Sarda Ji, who has written a book called Home at Last, which means we are trying to align with people who are realized. So there are certain realized beings, as we were earlier talking about. When they say that do this, and if you follow their directions, sometimes you feel that they help you in deciding the right course of action. But some people may listen to these realized beings and they may have faith. Some people may not listen to them. So now here is the question related to how our ego prevents us from accepting the right advice, whether it is coming from a friend or someone who is on the higher level of consciousness. So how to work with our ego in a way that we reach to the correct decision?
Listen, I would say just listen to your inner self. That's it. Regardless, you are elevated, you are evolved being or not, or self-realized being or not, or your normal life. We just have to go with what is it that you want. Like as you had said before, it's all about you are the builder. You are the builder of this life. You are the architect. You're doing everything of course, with the help of divine. We are the builders of our own destiny, and we are the architects of our own life. Therefore, you have to make that move toward the right versus wrong, regardless of ego telling you. And sometimes we make mistakes, but that's okay. Go ahead and make the decision, and then as you're doing it, you learn as you do that, and eventually you overcome that, and you take the right decisions, and you come to the point where you start listening your inner self. Eventually, that's what I would say. And there is always your insights are there telling you which direction to go anyway, and it's a matter of, are you ready to listen to that? Is everyone ready for that? And that's the problem comes there, because like I told you at the beginning of the talk, not everyone is at that evolutionary stage where they can put a lot of emphasis on that inner being, and that free will, where you can choose correctly all the time. And that's not there for everybody. Yet. So
well, let's talk about a decision that you made, and that decision was to write a book and share the step-by-step process of your journey towards the ultimate within. And so I assume if you are at a stage where if you close your eyes and you can connect to the all-pervading or to the core of your being just by closing your eyes, and that's what I think enlightened beings are capable of. So in your case, you decided that you should write it.
Right.
You decided that you should share it. What led you to decide to express it, articulate it, and put it in the form of a book and share?
Very good question. Yeah, that's true. In my case, actually, very strangely, I was driven to do everything within my, as if somebody is directing me, somebody is orchestrating everything is being done. I was never a writer. The fact that I wrote the book and expressed everything that had happened to me due to my inner divinity, actually, it's telling me to share my experience and what is all about. How do you get to that finest fabric of consciousness? How do you experience that blissful state, and how do you become part of that? It's all narrated for me, actually, step at a time. I was just a person that's listening to something else beyond, which had happened to me very systematically. So all my doings were with my insights, a lot of insights and positiveness that is directing me to take the right decision at the right time. I had followed through most of the time, and that's what I mean by when you reach a certain point where you do experience that divinity within you, you get that capacity to do just about anything without much effort eventually, and that's perhaps what had happened in my case.
This is beautiful. So you are driven to do something like writing a book, and somewhere parallel track of your mind tells you that this you are doing for a greater good. And then at second stage, if you are not continuously sustaining that awareness of being in tune to the absolute, then what may happen, and that hasn't happened with her, you are doing something and you are aware that you are doing it, so that others would also be able to taste something which helps in refining their way of living. So you do it, you go after that, and people don't respond. So now, Ruchika ji, when you want to help people and you find yourself that you are not being received in the same spirit by people, then you decide consciously or you don't decide. Sometimes you are disappointed. Not only disappointed, you are sometimes angry that you are doing so good and people are not receiving it. That might happen with someone who is teaching meditation also.
Sure, it can. So I think this is why you have to look at it, right? Am I writing a book or am I teaching meditation? It starts with a noble cause, like you said. I want to reach out to people. But when you teach meditation for myself, right? After teaching meditation, do I become better or worse? Right? Is my yardstick of success how many people I have taught, or am I just expressing my being? Right? Through my writing, is it just an expression of who I am, and then when people like it, great. If they don't like it, oh well, it doesn't make me bigger or smaller, because it's an expression of who I am. And similarly with meditation, it's just an expression of who I am. By more and more people taking it does not make me bigger. Less and lesser people taking it, they don't take anything away, because I'm complete in myself. And whatever I'm doing in life is an expression of that completeness. But if I'm looking for completion from outside, guess what? I have built my house on quicksand. Because you may not appreciate, Sarda ji may appreciate, somebody else doesn't appreciate, and I'm constantly being tossed around by opinions then. Then where is the stability? Where is being established in the being?
So I think this is another important space where we define what we do as expression of our completeness. That's what you said? Expression of your completeness. Do you want to express your completeness, or you want to make more money? If you ask this question, then 8 out of 10 people would say, I want to make more money, and forget about expressing my completeness. Now, Is there anything wrong in that?
But that's not an either or. I can make money, I can choose to make money, but if I don't make money, I'm not sad. That is expressing or being established in yourself, right? It's not like, oh, to be complete, I have to go to the Himalayas and express that way, right? You can go work in a bank, make a lot of money, but if tomorrow all of that was taken away from you, you would still be fine. That is the establishment I'm talking about. You know, one of the things that the US Constitution talks about is the pursuit of happiness. If we can make life an expression of happiness rather than a pursuit of happiness, it flips everything.
You want to say something about?
Yeah, you know, she's right. It's being contented of who you are. It's what you are, your beingness, you know. That's the most important. It's not something you're doing to get benefits, or you do this, do that. That's then again ego-driven life. You'll be doing that. You need to go with the essential nature of your being and do what's needed to be done through that. It will direct you what your needs are, what you need to do, and irregardless of what outside sources and influences of the circumstances are. It doesn't matter. You go ahead and do what you're supposed to do and spread that to everyone if you can, and that will benefit others. And that's what it's all about. It's not about, you know, money issues and status. That's again, we're talking about ego, you know, that comes into play. But as long as you're doing whatever you're doing and you are sharing it, thinking that we all are in it together, and that's what it's all about at the end of the day.
So there is one way when we hear, as Ruchika ji said, expression of your completeness. There is another where you feel that you don't have time to express yourself. You are bound by duty, and the duty demands that you act in a certain way, and that awareness of expressing yourself has taken backseat. Let me read a question, and probably that would connect with what I'm saying. So some decisions are emotional, some are rational, some spiritual, or maybe a combination of all these. Sometimes we decide on the basis of our emotional and financial priorities. This is very common for most of the NRIs in deciding whether to go to India and be with family or not on some crucial occasions. So now share your thoughts, both of you, in arranging our priorities so as to create optimum level of joy and satisfaction through our action. And here it is not directly related to your inner expression. It is like how things are laid out for you in terms of your emotional and financial priorities, and how you evaluate the whole scenario as NRI and your family members back home.
So I think you can, the point is, once you take a decision, right? So if you decide that, you know, being in this country is holistically, the financial benefits outweigh everything else, and you decide to be here, right? Then the decision is made. Then don't keep going back and forth on a daily basis and reevaluating the decision and talk about, oh my God, I had to make this decision, it's so tough, I don't want to be here. That is where you start dragging yourself down. Then once this decision is made, then be the best you can be of yourself, not vis-a-vis anybody else, because everybody is very unique. Every thumb impression is very, very unique, right? Then be the best you can be in the situation you are.
Same question to you, same answer or different?
No, I agree with her, and then it's just a matter of deciding. And also a lot of times we take decisions for our family members' sake also, you know, not necessarily just for what you want. You have to consider your children or your spouse, or if you're bringing your parents, what have you, who have you. You need to kind of make sure they're happy with that, you know, and also consider mostly what's good for them as well, not just for your own sake, but as a unit, what's good for them.
And Shadi, sometimes we have to decide with inadequate information available to us. For example, if somebody in your family needs to be operated and doctor says that there are 50-50 chances that he would survive or may not survive, so now you have to decide, you are in that core a team and you are debating whether to go for operation or not, what factors you may invoke from digital and divine range that may help you?
I would say I would take into consideration the person that's having the procedure done, what he or she would want, you know, and make based on that also you consider, you know, make the decision that you 100% think that would be okay, 50-50 or whatever. Either way it should be good, and you stay with that decision. It doesn't matter, you know, and even afterwards it works out fine, but you're always thinking about somebody, that individual that's there on the operating table, right? Mostly about that. So you're not thinking that the decision is not coming from for other reasons from within. It's coming from mostly to help somebody, to take care of somebody else, and your base is that. Therefore, as long as the base is that, you're helping and you're considering that as your priority, it might work out very well.
So Ruchika, similar scenario, if we stretch as far as decision making process is concerned, and you decided one course of action and the outcome is not as expected in terms of it being positive, then you start first blaming yourself, then you start blaming others. So that game of blaming people around you for a decision that you have made, it is also a cause of stress and tension, and bickering starts in between two individuals, whether they are family members or they are working in the office setting. What would be your advice how to develop the conviction to own one's decision?
It's a really great question. You need a lot of courage, and you need to be able to take responsibility. And you also need to be able to see that nobody takes a decision. I don't get up in the morning and say today is my day to make bad decisions. Everybody gets up in the morning saying they want to make the best decisions. So know that at that point in time, with the awareness that you have, with all the information that you had, you made the best decision. Now 10 years later, 15 years later, you can look back and say, I wish I had done it differently, but you were a different person with different sets of information, with different sets of awareness, and you did the best you can. You can only look back in hindsight. Hindsight is 20/20, right? And while your decision has something to do with it, there is also an invisible hand at play. And you always have to know that what you do is one part of it, and there is another part which is significantly bigger, that is right place, right time. Right? And the other thing that I would say is the whole thing about blame and guilt, these emotions don't help us at all. Right? I think all of us have to realize that the person I am today is different from the person I was 5 years back. As much as I might look the same, my name is the same, I'm in the same situation, we're all like a stream. Let's say a river. The name of the river is the same, but the water is not the same even 2 minutes from each other. So in some ways that is what we are. The person I was yesterday is different from the person I am today. And as long as you recognize that, you will not blame yourself and feel guilty about what you did yesterday because you were a different person.
You're a different person, I'm a different person, but we are the same, because as far as the continuity of the identity or reference point, that remains the same. But we are quickly going to be changing the screen in front of you if you stay with ITV, because we'll be saying thanks from this show, there will be something else that will come. So change continuously happens, but before we conclude, there's an interesting question which some of you may be facing or might have faced, where you need to decide who to be your life partner. Now, the meditation practices, does that help in getting to the right one who would make your life full of joy and happiness? Sardaji, hypothetically, what would you say?
Yeah, I would say everyone is builders of their own destiny, like I told you before, and we're in charge of our own life, architects of our own life. Meditation helps, yes. I mean, in increasing our intuitive power as to and shows the options and opens up a whole lot more things for us to go after and look for what we want. A right partner, right job, right man, what have you. But if you don't use those options correctly, then you're, back to square one. So meditation, of course, does help you think straight.
Yeah. Ruchika, 30 seconds. I think you have experience.
Yes, I have. I've experienced relationships before meditation and after meditation. I can say very positively, my relationships after meditation have been far more positive and effective. And not so much because, of course, it's the right person, but I also think I might be the right person too. Right? I have changed, which also makes me the right person for someone else.
Wonderful. On that right response by Ruchika ji, we wish all of you to be making decisions that leads you towards optimum level of happiness, satisfaction, success, and may we learn to operate in a way that our actions are expression of our completeness, as mentioned by Ruchika ji, and it's great having the presence of Sarda ji.
Thank you, Ashok ji.
Namaste, and Ruchika ji. And the idea is that we make this world a better place, and of course, it is good for us as well as. With lots of good wishes, do join us tomorrow for another session, which will be relevant and interesting at the same time. With lots of gratefulness for my panelists and lots of good wishes for you. This is Ashok Vyas.